So what happens now to former federal prosecutor Fred Tisi on if Robert Mueller's comments have now given new life to Democrats, quite a few on the wires right now, including Cory Booker, saying this adds more ammunition to the need for impeachment hearings. Is he right on that, Fred?
No, Neil, thanks for having me. He's not right. And quite frankly, I find Mr. Mueller's comments to be absolutely reprehensible. And the part that bothers me the most is that the bedrock of our system of justice is that people are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise beyond a reasonable doubt. He could have said, and this is the part that I have a problem with, his report could have said that our investigation has revealed probable cause to believe that the president committed obstruction of justice. He could have made that report and made that findings known to the Attorney General. He did not. It is not his place to exonerate the president. That is absolutely never the place of any prosecutor. It's not his place to comment that we couldn't say that he was guilty, we couldn't exonerate him. He can't. That's not his place. I think that what he did today really was one of the most political things I've ever seen a prosecutor do, and I'm deeply disappointed in the Justice Department for his conduct.
Well, you know, Fred, you're a very good lawyer. I'm not a lawyer at all, but I've watched enough legal shows to think that I can qualify as one. So
Law and Order, my favorite.
There you go. So what I didn't understand, having covered the Ken Starr investigation of the president, is he did make recommendations in that. Now, it was up to Congress to accept or reject them, but he did highlight crimes on the part of the president, lying under oath, et cetera, that he thought, you know, were prosecutable. I'm probably using the wrong term. In this report, no such recommendations, because that is, Mueller went into this saying, he was limited by the notion that you cannot indict a sitting president, but you can charge him with crimes. You can go ahead and do that, and he didn't. So there, I'm a little confused.
Right. So actually, you're not confused, because this whole thing is a giant kind of where's the ball under the cup. Mueller could have gone to Congress. He could have issued a report. His report's been made public. He could have said that our investigation revealed the buzzwords, which are the cornerstone of our justice system: probable cause to believe that obstruction was committed. These are the facts. This is the evidence. This is the evidence of his intent. And gone to Congress, as did Ken Starr, who was following the law, and said, I ask that you undertake impeachment proceedings, which ultimately they did. But not Mueller. He has to backdoor the whole thing to kind of keep this political firestorm alive for another 2 years. So he doesn't make those recommendations. That information is not in his report. He comes on television, and he makes these comments, which then are nothing more than chum in the water for the Democratic sharks to just start going into a feeding frenzy, and that's what you're seeing now.
You know, the market particularly picked up its losses. I know you safely avoid discussions like that, but I do notice that the market started cascading further south when Mueller made the comment, if we had evidence exculpating the president on obstruction, we would have noted it. Clearly saying we did not, so we did not. Now, he could have just as easily said, if we had evidence clearly connecting the president to obstruction, we would have noted that as well. Now, obviously, by focusing on the fact we didn't have enough to exonerate him, he was throwing it in Congress's hands, but adding fuel to the fire, right?
But here's the problem. Again, it's not his place to exonerate the president, or any individual for that matter.
I just think if you don't have it either way, then why say anything at all, right?
Correct, because if you have nothing, then by definition you don't have enough evidence to establish probable cause. His job, the job of any prosecutor, is not to look for evidence that exonerates. It's to look for evidence that incriminates. That's what you're supposed to do. And if he had evidence that that Donald Trump had engaged in obstruction, and we could talk about that all day long as to why I think he didn't do it, if he has evidence that incriminates him, and he thinks that there's sufficient evidence to incriminate, then he needs to make a recommendation as to probable cause or as to prosecution. I have never in all my life, and I've been doing this for 30-some years, I've never in my life seen a prosecution or a prosecutor come out and say, oh, well, I can't tell you that the guy's innocent, because he's presumed innocent. Everyone's presumed innocent. That's the travesty of all of this.
Well, if something shouts obstruction, as in the Ken Starr report, the cover-up of the Clinton White House on the Monica Lewinsky issue, another issue, it was so stated in the Starr report. And it was left to Congress to decide what to do with that. And we can make political arguments back and forth as to whether Republicans were overzealous. In retrospect, perhaps they were. Because the president's popularity rating soared after this whole drama soon faded.
Right.
But that is not up to the press. It's not up to us. It's not up to very smart lawyers like yourself to decide. That's up to the prosecutor in question, or in this case, Mr. Mueller, to state one way or the other, not leave it as a jump ball and leave it open-ended. Millions
Correct.
went into this investigation to draw some conclusions, and when you boast about the fact that you could decide neither way, you haven't helped the cause, right?
Right. In criminal law, when you're the prosecution, if you can't decide either way, you lose by definition because the burden's beyond a reasonable doubt. So if it's 50-50, if it's a coin toss, and this is what juries are told day in and day out, you lose. You know, I mean, just because President Trump may have done things that may have hindered an investigation, he may have said things, but that's not obstruction. I mean, if you take $7,500 out of the bank and you withdraw it, and the teller decides to call the FBI and say you stole it, and you tell the FBI to go away, and you tell your friends not to talk to the FBI, that's not obstruction. You never did anything wrong, and it has to be corrupt. You're not doing anything wrong that you're trying to hide. And at the time that the president talked to Comey, and now we're getting into the substance of this, he didn't know about the investigation about Flynn, and he had every right to fire him. So that's what Mueller did. It's up to Rosenstein and Barr to determine whether or not there was obstruction. Both of them have come out and said, we reviewed the report. There's not a sufficient evidence to charge with obstruction. It's checkmate. End of case.
You would think, because if you had a compelling evidence either way, you would have stated. But to say there was not enough compelling evidence either way, and to brag essentially about an indecision,